regularly, but I'll try to record, especially when somebody is not connected to the class and should be, or not here at the class. If you're going to miss class and you want me to record class, please tell me so before class begins so I can remember to do that. I won't always remember to do it, so it's a good idea to help me to remember to do that. Just check to make sure that I'm not. Oh, I probably need to send an email to Caleb. That's probably what I've forgotten to do here. Let's see. Is that his email? I'm not sure. Let me check really quick. Yeah, that's his thing there. So, how do I get back to my thing where I was? Here we go. All right. Let me email this really quick. Are we in right? On Monday. 3. There it is. Oops. Okay, so that should be going to him now. Okay, so anyway, if we go to WebAssign and go to our class here, if we go all the way down to the resources button here at the bottom, I wish this was at the top, but it's at the bottom. You can actually access the syllabus here, and you can get all the information about the class that you need here, including my contact information. My office hours are by appointment, mostly because I find that works best for the students. Anyway, they usually just kind of come in when they can. I'm usually around my office, but if you call or email first just to make sure I'm there, then I'll definitely try to be there for you. Emailing me is the best way to get a hold of me. You can call my office. I'm often away from the phone, just doing things, and so when you leave a message there, it'll just go to my email anyway. And I am available. I'm available in the evenings also, and weekends, Saturdays anyway. I don't generally answer emails or calls on Sunday. I take one day off per week just to survive and spend a little time with my family. But please feel free to contact me when you need help. Don't put that off, because you don't want to waste time struggling with something in a homework assignment or whatever. You just want to get on with life. So, send me a message. You can leave me a message on my phone or whatever, send me a message by email, and then move on with something else. Move on to another problem, do another homework from another class, whatever. Don't beat your head against the wall. There are plenty of painful things in tough classes like this without, beating your head against walls. Here's the information for the getting into WebAssign again. The course objectives, we're going to be learning about mechanics of physics, which is essentially the physics of motion. But we're also going to be we're going to be heavy into the use of vectors. Vectors are quite important in physics. They're the way that we keep track of motion. So you're going to learn quite a bit of vector mechanics and vector operations. And that's useful too when you get on to Calculus 3. You'll do a lot of vector mechanics. That class is all about vector calculus. So you'll learn a lot more about vectors in that class as well. And then as you go on into engineering, you'll learn more about vectors. Most of you are electrical engineering majors. in particular, electrical engineers learn something about a particular vector um, called a phasor vector. It's called well, they just call them phasors. But anyway, they're very useful for keeping track of different things going on in AC systems, in alternating current systems. So vectors quite useful, quite useful. But we'll give you all this basic stuff on movement, and then next semester, the second semester of this class, which if you're going into engineering, you will also need to take, is all about electricity and magnetism, pretty much. So that one for electrical engineers is much more important, I think, but you can't actually learn that stuff without learning this stuff because they are related in some ways. So that's kind of the overview of the class. Quizzes, I usually will not give quizzes unless we're having problems with attendance, people coming to class or people participating. The reason that I give quizzes is to encourage thought, encourage discussion, not to test you on things that you're supposed to be reading or knowing. So my quizzes are not generally difficult. They're just generally designed to start conversations. So if you participate in the class, when I ask questions, or if you ask your own questions, it's not likely I'll give quizzes, but the more silence there is out there in the classroom, the more likely I am to give quizzes. So try to participate. I try to make it as engaging as I possibly can and to ask as many questions as I can. But if you're not understanding something, or if you just want to know more about something, or want something repeated or explained differently, please speak up. Please interrupt or whatever, and I'll be happy to accommodate you in that. Of course, we will have homework. Physics classes are always heavy in homework because in order to understand how to do something, you got to do it. So we will be doing a fair amount of homework through WebAssign. And we'll talk a lot more about that later. Sometimes I assign writing assignments with the homework. Usually they're very short, a couple of sentences, a paragraph at the most. There's no particular format that I'm looking for. I'm just looking for you to express ideas and understanding in a clear and clean and concise manner. So those may or may not show up this semester. It depends on how semesters go and how I feel people are understanding things, but sometimes I do that. And they're just counted as homework assignments when I do that. Exams, we will have 2 exams for this class. One about halfway through, midterm-ish kind of exam, and then a final exam. The midterm has problems that are taken directly from the homework. So there'll be problems that you've seen before. They will not necessarily have the same answers as before because WebAssign randomizes the parameters of the question so that the answers are different. But if you understand how to do the homework problems, then you're in good shape for the exams. The final exam will include questions from the last half of the class homework, but it will also include a few questions from the first exam. So anything that is covering the entire semester essentially will be something you've seen in homework and on an exam. You'll have seen it twice before. So that hopefully removes a little bit of the stress of exams. Also, exams are open book. I allow you to use your book and any notes that you take in your book. Students do that a couple of different ways. Sometimes they print off the book and put it in a binder and then take notes by hand on their textbook. That works quite well. Sometimes they will print off just a certain page, maybe a page that has a list of formulas or a page that has an example that really was useful to them or whatever. And they just print out a few pages and then they take their notes on those pages, and that's totally fine. Some people like to purchase the book. That's also, you can purchase the book and I'll show you where that's done. But you can purchase it for about 50 bucks. The downside to that is they'll have to buy another book next semester because the book is only offered in sections. It's not offered as a complete book anymore. They used to offer it as a complete book, but I haven't seen that. You might be able to find it on a used book site somewhere as a complete book, and that probably won't cost very much either. But anyway, some people buy the book and take notes in the book. And then some people take notes in the online electronic book or the PDF version of the book. They actually electronically take notes. And that is also allowed for the test. You can use your electronic book in the exam. Your proctor for the exam will allow you to have two windows open at a time, or two tabs in one window open at a time, one for the textbook and one for the exam. The advantage of the electronic textbook is that it's searchable, which is extremely useful. When you're looking for a specific subject, you type it in, hit search, boom, you're there, and it's very fast. Also, the notes that you take electronically in the book are also searchable. So they're easy to find. It's easy to find your notes really quickly online. So those are the advantages of the online textbook for your exam. The reason that I do not allow notes outside of the textbook is because it's been my experience, and not just my experience, but many instructors' experiences, and it's actually been backed up by actual research done, that having an open book exam doesn't really change the grades of the people taking the exam when it comes to physics and high-end math classes. It just doesn't. Understanding the material is more important than remembering the material in these classes, because whether or not you can look it up just doesn't make that much of a difference. It's just not that important. Understanding how to accomplish the problem turns out to be a much more difficult task, and has much more bearing on the grade overall. So I've decided to just remove the stress from the situation and call it open book. If you've never cracked the book open, or you're not doing the homework very well, it's not likely the open book's going to help you anyway. But if you have been using your book and you've been doing the homework, it just allows you to relax and just do the work instead of trying to memorize a bunch of stuff before the exam. So that's the reason. Another reason for it is that I want you to read the textbook. It's important to be able to read technical writing when you're an engineer, and a textbook is as close to technical writing as you're going to get for the next year or two. As you get closer to your junior and senior year in engineering, you'll start reading more technical papers, more journals and other things like that. And you'll see that the journals actually have some things in common with textbooks and some things that are very different from textbooks. And you'll have to learn a little bit more about doing technical reading. So I want you to read the textbook. I want you to get used to that idea of learning something, or discovering something, or finding something in technical writing. So that's the other reason that I do that. In here it says there are 2 midterms exams. I used to give 2 midterms, now I only do 1. So we only have 13 chapters that we cover in this class, and we have 16 weeks. So essentially, if we can shoot for a chapter a week, we'll end up with a couple of extra weeks, which is good usually, because it usually takes us longer to get through a couple of the beginning chapters as we kind of get the swing of things going. And so having a little extra time is good to just kind of get those things done. And then if we end up with a week or two done, at the end of the semester, we can use it to prepare for the final, or we can study some other topics that you're interested in. We can use that time to finish up on labs if we're not quite caught up on labs, or we can use that time to just relax and do your other classes, which I'm sure you have plenty of other work to do in your other classes. So hopefully that little bit of extra time will be to our advantage. The grading in this class is done with a fairly good balance of homework, exams, and other things. Now there is a change that I'm going to make here in this distribution here. The midterm exam will be worth 15%, and the final exam will be worth 20%. So those two will be switched. When I used to do 2 exams, I used to do 10% for each of the midterms, and then 15 for the final. But I'm going to switch those so that the final is worth just a little bit more than the midterms, than the midterm will be. But still, you can see that the homework is about 30%, the midterms are about 35%, and the rest of the class is a total of about 35%. So it's split evenly. That the rest of the class, the quizzes, the professionalism, which is just behaving professionally, being a decent human being kind of thing, so that you're not causing trouble in class or causing trouble with other students. That's pretty much free points right there. Five free points as long as you behave in the classroom and in your interactions in the classroom and outside the classroom. But the quizzes and the labs, pretty much all my students earn like 99% of their quiz points, and sometimes we never even have any quizzes because everybody's participating in class. So everybody gets those points for free. And then the labs, usually my students are between 18 and 20 points per lab, which is between 90% and 100% on their labs. And the reason for that is because I'm not going to grade my labs based on nitpicking your lab reports. Lab reports aren't important to me as long as they explain what you did pretty clearly and explain what you learned pretty clearly. I'm not looking for you to complete a certain amount of things or report things in a specific way, because you have plenty of other science classes that you're going to take where you're going to have to do that, where everything's going to be very exactitude kind of stuff, you know. My purpose of giving you these labs to take home is for you to experiment, to explore things on your own, to learn things on your own, and maybe even to go off track a little bit. You find something interesting that you want to do with the lab equipment I've given you, go and do it. If it's related to the lab, great. If it's a little bit beyond the lab, fine, whatever. But I want you to have the experience of having an open-ended and laboratory experience or experimental experience where you get to mess around a little bit, play around a little bit, explore a little bit, and not have such a rigid thing to follow. Because in real science, it's just not that way. And you know, it seems like every science class I ever took made me think that science has this set of instructions that you follow and this result that you're supposed to get. And science is never that way. And if it is, it's really boring science. Who would want to do that? You know, who wants to get a result that you know you're supposed to get? I would like to find something that was totally unexpected, or something that makes no sense that I have to go and make sense of. I have to try to figure out what happened. That's the beauty of science, in my opinion. So I want you to have more experience with that. So as long as you're participating in doing the work and expressing to me the things that you've learned in labs, you're going to do well there. So that 30% of the class, most of my students earn pretty much all of those points for those 30%. Homework, you can work on pretty much until you get that score that you want. You're going to lose a few percentage points. It's like 3% for getting the problem wrong the first time and 3% for getting it wrong the next time. And so if you use 5 chances to get it right, you might only get 80% on that, or so that's 85% on that problem. But still, if you're getting most of the problems right on the first couple of tries, most of my students are getting 90% above in their homework. And so you're getting 90% of those points as well. And then all you really have to worry about is 30% of your score coming from exams. And I've had students tank one of the 2 exams and still get an A, because all the rest of those points they've worked really hard to get. The beauty of this system is that hard work is rewarded slightly more even than test taking. Test taking, I found that stresses most students out, and I found that most people feel like their hard work is more valuable than their stressed out testing time. And so I try to remove as much stress as possible in the testing time and give you some reward for working hard, because this is a difficult class no matter what you do. And this is not just me. This is a very common way to teach these 2 courses. So this is kind of a different philosophy than many classes that you might find. But one of the big reasons that we do this in this physics class and other similar classes at the beginning of an engineering program is to show people that hard work can get them through these programs. And then they go on to their second semester and they work hard again, and their third semester and they work hard again. And by the time they're a senior and they're graduating, maybe they struggled here and there with this subject or that subject, but their hard work helped them to learn it, helped them to understand it, and helped them to apply it. And a hardworking engineer usually is a great engineer. That's almost always the case. You very rarely find a engineer who's hardworking and incompetent. I've never even heard of them. Hardworking engineers just make good engineers because they learn it through hard work. So that's kind of the philosophy behind this grading system. Hard work will get you a good grade, and that's the bottom line. The grading scale is a 5% scale. This will probably change in years to come because we're working on having minus grades add to this instead of just pluses. But essentially 90 and above is an A. If you're in the 80s, you're in the B range. If you're in the 70s, you're in the C range. In the 60s, you're in the D range, and so on. So Anybody have any questions about that? This is the second time we've gone through that, I know, but no questions. Okay. So the last stuff is all the lawyer stuff, the chain of resolution. If you have a problem with me or this class or something, and you don't want to come and talk to me about it, you can always come and talk to me about it. I'm very easy to talk to, I think. But if you don't feel comfortable with that, you're more than welcome to go talk to my division chair, Chad Swanson. He has an office over in the other building here on South Campus in North Platte. He's in and out of there a lot, hard to catch him there. Lots of meetings and whatever else that he's doing, but I would recommend emailing him. He actually answers emails quite well. He also has his phone number there, but that's his office number. So if he's not in his office, he's not probably going to answer that phone. But he's more than willing to talk to you about any issues you may have. And it doesn't even have to be about this class. It can really be about any class, and he can point you in the right direction. We have an academic honesty statement. Don't cheat. Kind of hard to cheat in this class, honestly, because there's not many people around that can help you cheat with this class, because very few people have taken this class. But don't cheat. Do your own work, because that'll help you to be the best engineer you can be. Students with Disability Act requires the college to provide accommodations for those who qualify for them. But if you need an accommodation, you do need to go through the disabilities office. They're in McCook, it's Brendan Lenhart. I don't know where his office is, but his number is in this document here. And Chris Turner is the one that's in charge here on South Campus in North Platte. His number is on here as well. And also the email here goes to all of these people. So if you just email disabilityservices@mpcc.edu, they will take care of you, and then they will send me an email with the things that I need to do to make accommodations. If you don't go through that process, we cannot provide the accommodations by law. So just so you know. And this is the stuff that they make. This is all the stuff we're trying to teach you in general. So, okay, all that. That's it. Any questions about all that last legal stuff? Any questions at all? All right. So we're done with that. Let's move on to looking through WebAssign again here. Come on, go away, you dumb thing. So let's close that. Okay, so going back up here to the top of WebAssign, your thing is going to look slightly different than this, because I am an instructor. I used to have a little button here where I could go to the. No, this looks actually like the student version. I think this is the student version. So yeah, this is the student view. I can't really tell, but anyway, it should look something like this. And you're going to have your assignments listed down here, and your textbook access over here, class information over here. I can't remember if I've given you any other resources. It doesn't look like I have. I may or may not add resources to this resources tab. It's not the easiest thing to use in WebAssign, so I don't often use it. I'm not going to open up any forums here unless somebody requests them. I've done it in the past and nobody's used them, so I just don't do it anymore. But if you want, I can open up a forum where you guys can get online and chat back and forth, or you guys can just talk to each other in person, or trade phone numbers or something if you want. I don't care. It's a very good idea to work together to do homework, to find a group that you can sit down and do homework at a given time every day. It's always good to have a couple of people, because then you get together and you're like, oh, I got number 4, but I didn't get number 7, and you can trade papers. You can just go back and forth. Hey, this is what I did on number 4. And then you can just follow along with someone else's work. It's a very useful tool, honestly. A lot of people kind of frown on that as if it's cheating or something. And yeah, it would be cheating if you were copying what they wrote for a paper or something. You're copying their ideas and their thoughts. But in physics, it's a really good idea to see how other people approach a problem, to see how they set it up, to see how they use the mathematics, to see what formulas they use, to whatever, how they imagined the problem going. They're going to have different insights, different ideas, different background than you, and it will help you to learn. The more exposure you can get to that, the better. You don't want to just say, hey, I haven't done the homework. Can I copy your homework and use all everything that you did to do my homework, because that's not going to be very helpful to you. You want to definitely try. You definitely want to fail every once in a while, because failing is important when you're trying to learn. It actually creates pathways in your brain that are important for learning. So, but collaboration, highly recommended. Sometimes I feel like my physics degrees should have had like 5 or 6 of my friends' names on them as well as my name, because they all helped me and I helped them. So very, very useful. The exams are also here, listed in the assignments. When you click on the exam, it will ask for a password, and that's where the proctor comes in. You can have your exams proctored on campus in the library. The Success Center or Testing Center part of the library will do that for you. Anybody in the library can really do that for you. I also have an option for online proctoring if you cannot go to the library. It's reserved for people that have a true need, because it is intensive for the person doing the proctoring. They have to essentially kind of concentrate only on one thing when they're doing that. But it requires that you have 2 devices, a computer and a phone or a tablet or something like that, and that both those devices can connect to Zoom. So if you're interested in doing online proctoring because you're far away from a campus or whatever, just send me an email and request that, and I'll get you connected with the right people, and we can do that for you. They will also make sure that all the rules are being obeyed, and that you're, got all the proper things with you. Other things that you can bring with you to an exam include, you can bring blank paper blank scratch paper, lined or unlined, I don't care. You can bring your writing utensils of whatever type you want. And you can use a calculator, but you may not use a cell phone calculator. So cell phone calculator is not allowed. You can use any kind of scientific calculator you want, any kind of other calculator, but not a cell phone calculator. And your cell phone will not be allowed to be used during the exam. If you need a calculator to borrow, I can loan you a calculator, and I will ask you to please return it. This is a very basic scientific calculator, and I have a few of these kicking around. But they also have calculators in the success centers and testing centers that they can loan you for the tests. So these calculators here, I can loan you for use like in the classroom. If you're going to do your homework here, or during class if you need a calculator. But I can't like have you taking them all over the place, because then they'll almost always get lost. But you can use them here as long as you return them to me and leave them here when you're done. Just hate buying them all the time. Any questions about the homework and the exams so far? Are we good? Let's open up the homework really quick, and I'll show you the different types of things that you should expect. WebAssign can actually handle a variety of different question problems. I don't take advantage of them all. I'm considering taking advantage of more of them, but that's still in the works. I'll have to code my own questions, which takes time. When you open up the homework assignment, you'll see several things right here at the top. You can print the assignment, which is actually quite useful. Many of my successful students do this. I would say most of my successful students are people who will print the assignment, and they will actually write on that printed copy all of their calculations and their drawings and their sketches and everything else. They'll include it there because that's a very good way to keep track of what you've done in the past. It's a good way to study for the exams. It's a good way to see what mistakes you've made and correct them, and so on and so forth. So you can go ahead and print off the assignment if you'd like, and use that. Very useful. You also have the request extension button down here. You can press that and request that the homework assignment be extended. And usually if you've done most of the assignment and it's about to be due, I'm just gonna extend that for an hour or two or whatever, or maybe a day if necessary. But if you're requesting the extension over and over again just because you're starting the homework late, and you're starting at 10:30 at night and it's due at 11, and you're just not getting the homework done, we're going to have a talk. We're going to have a talk about getting your homework done by starting it earlier, right? We want to make sure that you're not falling behind in this class. I'm not a big stickler for due dates, but I do want students to keep up. I don't want somebody doing 5 homework assignments at the end of the semester. That's just a recipe for disaster in physics. These homework assignments get progressively more difficult. So you don't want to do a bunch of them at once. And you definitely can't expect to really learn what you need to learn by doing a bunch of them all at once. But you can use that button. You can also just email me directly from the questions by hitting the Ask Your Teacher button up here on the right. You can also take notes in your homework and electronic notes, and they will keep track of them so that you can know what you did, or if you have anything that you want to remember about that question, you can click on the My Notes and you can take those notes there. The Ask Your Teacher button, I highly recommend you use it when you have questions about the assignment. In fact, I really would love to just require that. Don't send me an email in my email box. Send it through the Ask Your Teacher button, because that actually sends me a message with the problem in it. So I can see what you've done so far. I know the context of your question, and I can actually, almost every time when that happens, like 80% or more of the time, I can just look at what you've done so far and know what I need to tell you. I can know what you've done wrong because I've taught this class so much. I have a lot of experience with the things that can go wrong with a question. Sometimes it's just misunderstanding of the question. Sometimes you're just approaching the question wrong using an incorrect formula. And sometimes it's just something goofy, like you entered it wrong. You had the right answer. It's just difficult to get it into the computer correctly. So then I can answer that quickly, and I can make corrections to points if I need to. Over here on the left side, you see that it tells you the number of points you've earned. For this question, there's 11 total points, one for each of these little problems here. And it'll tell you how many points you've earned. And if it's, if you're on your 3rd attempt at it, it will automatically deduct those points, and then you'll be able to see that. And you can actually break down the points part by part here. So how many points you earned on each part. You can see how many submissions you've used as well. So up at the top, of course, you can see all your scores across the entire assignment and your total score. Also up at the top, you have these buttons that I did explain once more. You can get a link to your ebook by pressing on this button. You can get a link to the calendar of assignments with this button here, the calendar button. Then you have your grade book. You can look at your grades overall. I will set up the grade book so that you get an approximate grade as the semester goes on, but it's not really useful until after the first exam. So it's not really useful pretty much for the first half of the class. And it's also not extremely useful because I don't always get the lab grades entered in right away, because I try to wait for all the lab papers to come in from all the students everywhere before I grade them and put those grades in the computer. So oftentimes the lab grades aren't entered in until almost the end of the semester because of the delay time and all of that. But your grades here will give you a pretty good indicator of how you're doing overall in the class, and so we will use that function, but I wouldn't necessarily take it at face value all the time. You can get a list of your assignments and go back to the home page in the thing here in your account. The communications button is quite important in WebAssign and quite useful in WebAssign. Let's see. Well, that's not actually what I thought it was going to do. Okay, so probably we want to go over here to this button. This is the email notification settings. So they used to be under communications, now it's here. If you go to email notification settings, you can actually have WebAssign email you when you have an assignment due. A couple of days before it's due, you can do as many as 48 hours, and you can do as little as 6 hours. And I highly recommend you use this feature. So you can choose what you want to be notified for, due date changes, this, that, and the other. Let's see, due date changes, announcements, extensions, private messages, ask your teacher. It doesn't say when homework is due. It used to have one that says when a due date comes up. Hopefully this still works for that. Oh yeah, so this one is actually that one. So they've just changed the way they do it. So if you want to be notified if a due date is changed or if there's an announcement, I would recommend that you connect at least those two, and maybe the extension requests. Well, maybe just all of them, because then you know if I've answered your messages that you've sent to me. I would just click all those boxes and then choose the time that you want to be notified before an assignment's due. So if you want to know 2 days before it's due, do this one. And if you want to know 12 hours before it's due, and we'll click one of these and then go ahead and save that. Now, if you are one of these people these days that hardly ever check your email, um, then I would recommend that you have some kind of email alert on your phone so that it tells you when you got an email so that these things are easy to notice. Or I would change your email in this system to your cell phone's email. All cell phones have an email attached to them, depending on the system, depending on the company you use. So if it's Verizon, it's your 10-digit number, your area code and your phone number at vtext.com. And that email will go directly to a text message on your cell phone. And it's different for every other one. There's one for T-Mobile, there's one for AT&T, there's one for pretty much every company out there. You have to go find that on the internet. If you go look for email to text on the internet, you'll find a list of those things on several different websites, and you can figure out what your email address is for your cell phone. So I would recommend doing that if you don't ever check your email or you don't want to set up a notification alarm on your cell phone for your email. Any questions about communications and these other tools in WebAssign? No questions? Okay. If you have any questions at all, feel free to email me later. There are other settings. You can actually open WebAssign Help. WebAssign Help used to be a lot better when it was not owned by a company, but recently they sold this to a company, Cengage, and I think when you call them now, you're like talking to somebody in Pakistan. So it gets a little bit convoluted as you're trying to talk to people, but it's still decent. It's just not as good as it used to be. It used to be just you'd be calling somebody in South or North Carolina that had used the program, used the system. They were usually students that had used the system before, so it was just much easier, much better. You also have your account settings here. That's where you would go and change your email if you were going to change your email. I'm going to close that. And then I don't have any idea what this is. Oh, so you can choose English or Spanish. So, habla español, push that button. Toca. I can't remember the word for button. Anyway. I can't think of anything else we need to talk about with the WebAssign system, really. Oh, there is one more thing I wanted to talk about with the WebAssign system. As you go through these problems, when you get to a problem that has this thing that you fill in, it'll sometimes give you this little help. This one, it says enter a number. So it's often a good idea to click in the answer box just to see what they're expecting you to do. Gives you a little bit of help there. You can also access the ebook, and sometimes there are even videos. I don't remember how many videos are in this one. I don't think many, but sometimes there are other helpful, useful things there. But if you're going to something more complicated, like, let's see, like this one, no, that's not one here. Sometimes they actually bring up a little toolbox. Let's see if they have a one that brings up a toolbox for us. Nope. It's not it. What did that just open? I don't know what it just opened. Oh, that's a citation thing. Okay. Could have sworn I had one that would bring up this toolbox thing. Anyway, sometimes when you click in this box, it'll actually bring up a option for you to insert some different mathematical symbols or something like that. Because sometimes is requesting, it may request you to actually put an equation in, for example, or something like that. And if that's the case, when you click in the box, it'll actually open up a thing of tools, or it gives you a little thing to click on to open tools. And you can put in things like the logarithm or the sine or exponents or stuff like that. And So it's useful to know that you can click on that box and get that help. Okay, so now going back to the textbook for this course, University Physics Volume 1. We are going to cover all of Chapter 1 in this this week. Essentially, we're going to try to get it all done by Friday. Where it shouldn't take us long to go through all this material because it's mostly review, talking about physics in general, units, dimensions, estimating things, significant figures, and how to generally solve problems in physics. It's not a terribly difficult chapter. The next chapter we go into, we study vectors. And so if you've ever worked with vectors before, this is a little bit of review, but some of this will definitely not be a review unless you've taken vector calculus before. We'll be doing some algebra vectors and product of vectors down here, which is usually something reserved for a more advanced math class. So the second chapter is mostly mathematical, and we won't necessarily use the stuff in this chapter, some of it until later, like the products of vectors we won't use until several chapters down the line. But we're going to kind of introduce it to you now, and then we'll come back to it later. We actually get started on the actual physics in chapter 3. So we're looking at a week from this previous Monday, a week from next Monday, not this Monday. So a week from next Monday will be when we actually start motion along a straight line and get into that stuff. So on Friday, when we come back together, we will start chapter 2 or start chapter 1 and finish chapter 1. And then you'll have that until that evening to finish the homework. I would recommend getting started on the homework right now, because probably most of it you can either get started on or do. And there's probably just maybe 1 or 2 things that you might have questions on, and then you can ask those questions on Friday and we'll be done. If there's a lot of stuff that you are not understanding from chapter 1, that's totally fine. Don't worry about it. We'll cover it on Friday, and we'll extend the homework if necessary. Don't be afraid to be the one that says, hey, can we have an extra day on the homework? There's a lot of things that I didn't understand, because it's usually the case that more than one person is wanting to ask that question, but not willing to. Don't be unwilling to ask the question or to ask for that extension or help. That's all we've got for today. Get started on the homework. Get your questions back to me, either by the Ask Your Teacher button or bring them on Friday, and we will see you later. Have a good one.
Bye.
See ya.